Following is an exclusive production of Minuteman Command. The Flagship Pod with your hosts, ESPN personalities Mike Corey and Rini Ngolia, is on the air. Brought to you by Todd Fritz Roofing, with insight and info from UMass and MAC insiders. From the Command Studios, here are your hosts, Mike and Rini.
Folks, welcome back to another special edition of the Flagship Pod. I'm Christian McCollum here with Rini Ngolia, and Rini, we got an awesome guest today.
We do, and I can't wait. But first of all, I just laugh every time because there's a lot going on. People we know, we haven't changed the intro yet. Maybe I'll just start calling you Mike Christian.
There you go.
For those that noticed too, I'm going back. I used to have a different angle. We need to change the juju, so I got a little different angle with my camera this week, and I'm feeling good about it. But yes, our special guest, Thorr Bjorn. Everyone, heard the news. Athletic director at Rhode Island for 18 years. Played at UMass, started his career at UMass. He's back, and we got him on the pod. So we got a lot of great questions for him. So Thorr, welcome.
Hey, Rini. Thank you, Christian. Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you, and I've just been smiling for a week. So really appreciate the time.
So I'll ask the first question, and me and Christian will kind of kick back and forth. First of all, I've known you, Thorr, probably, forget 30 years, probably like 33 or 34.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I was telling Christian, and you had mentioned this in the press conference, you were the ticket guy. You were the ticket manager. So, my family, my parents are still alive, Thorr, and I'm so blessed. My dad's fighting through some health issues. But I told him that you came back to UMass, and he lit up. And so it was awesome because, those are the days. And I don't think people realize in the early 90s, mid 90s, we didn't have internet. Cell phones were just coming around. I mean, when you did the tickets, you filled out everything, and you were back then, the ticket guy's the most important person because, you're trying to get extra tickets for family and friends. And so, we developed great relationship with all the players, and of course you were a former player. So, but my dad was super happy. So from one UMass football player to another, I am thrilled that you're back.
Well, Rini, thank you. And it's funny when you reached out, and then I think we were in texting even a little bit before, and I just remembered the blue van and the blue Ngolia van, the best tailgate you ever came across, and your parents were just amazing, and the Alessio family that seemed always with them too. And it's fun because again, ever since this opportunity came about, just these memories, these incredible memories and lifelong friendships and great experiences during my time at UMass as, like you say, as the ticket game ops guy, and then marketing corporate sales guy, and then interim AD. I mean, there's just, I think about the years of connections and relationships and former teammates that have reached out. And it's funny, I said a few of them. Pete Montini, the best offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life. He lives out in California now. So I said, Monty, I'm sending you some roadie gear. Again, this was 3 or 4 months ago. So he sent a picture of it back. And now these guys are and Steve Robar, one of my closest friends in the world, defensive lineman. They're like, can I get rid of this now? Can I get rid of my stuff now? And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's good. Now you can get rid of it. Feel free. But it's fun.
Before I dive into the first question, I have to tell people. So my dad bought a blue Ford conversion van and started my career. He drove that game to every single game I ever played in. I played in 44, only 2 times. One time he flew into Maine because he was running late. He had to fly into Maine. And then when I played in the 96 Hula Bowl, obviously he flew there. But my parents, every game, they took the ticket stubs and they put it in there. So I have a cigar box with every ticket stub of every game I played in. It was just awesome experience. And it's just, Thorr, it's a much simpler life for all of us back then.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get it, technology, the way where we live now, it's great, but man, something to be said for the late 80s or early 90s for sure. But okay, first question, and you answered this in the presser, but there's a lot of people that watch this pod that probably didn't listen to that presser or go back. You were the athletic director at Rhode Island, 18 years. You've done incredible things there. I mean, football program to the FCS playoffs, basketball program, your Olympic sports. So the first thing people say is, why is he leaving as athletic director to take a deputy athletic director role at UMass? And so I just kind of want you to go ahead and tell the fans why you're coming back.
I appreciate that. And I'll and both you and Christian can shut me off if I start going too long, but it's a great question, and I've gotten that too. And I talked to a really good friend after Ryan reached out. And first, let me start by saying, when Ryan first called me and talked me through the vision, I remember he called me a year ago and talked to me about the move to the MAC. And again, I'm in my brain thinking as a A10 AD, right? So I'm thinking about some of the impacts associated with the non-football sport, every sport other than football. And then when he reached out a couple weeks ago and started talking me through his vision, and it's not just a vision anymore, Rini and Christian. That's the thing that was different for me this time. I said, there's a plan. There's an executable plan here that we can go through and move this forward. This decision of going to the MAC was a football-based decision. We all know that. And we also know that UMass football would not be successful as an independent. It's impossible. So I know people get frustrated. I understand it. People get frustrated with the lack of success or, since the move to FBS. But there's an absolute reason for that. It's as clear as anything that you can't do it successfully as a independent, and that's nobody's fault. I mean, originally the move to the MAC made sense, and then Temple comes out, and then the MAC says you're all in or not. Okay, the decision I think at that time was the right decision based on all the facts. So fast forward now, and the thing that excites me is that we're in position to get to that point where we can be competitive and successful and compete for a championship, and I think, I'm not as familiar with the MAC as I am with certain other programs, of course, but certainly paying a lot more attention than I have before. And we've played the MAC in a couple programs here at Rhode Island, a couple bye games. And I look at it and say, you know what? UMass can get there. Why? They're in the league. The investments that are being made, not talked about. And that's the other piece that gets me excited. When you talk about NIL and going to find players, it's the next most critical thing. And people will say you need to do work around the stadium. I get it. Absolutely. It's got to get better. No problem. You got to get players. First and foremost, you got to get players. And we actually have an advantage now. When I sit back and think, okay, NIL and NIL support will help us get into conversations with guys that we need to get into to help us move forward. Huge difference maker compared to where we've been before. Joe Harasymiak's not a good coach. He's a great coach. And I'm proud to say that I've known him for a long time. I don't like Joe. I love him. And from the time we were at Maine, when he was at Maine, we developed a really good friendship, followed each other's career. It's not like we're talking every day, but you don't have to do that. You and I haven't done that, but there's that friendship that lasts a lifetime that gets reconnected like that. So that excites me. So when I sit back and say, okay, here's a chance to, come in, focus really closely and partner with Ryan in this area, partner with Joe, I'm excited. I think I can bring value. I think I can bring connections from the past. I think I can bring experiences of mistakes I've made at URI and then also to where we got to and to the point where there's a tremendous amount of pride. I'm getting the chills thinking about it. Selling out games at Meade Stadium was something that never happened or certainly hadn't happened in 40 years. Now it's happening. Why? Because we identified, and this is what you may end up asking me later, but we identified the areas in which we made errors. What do we need to fix? And then you start figuring those out piece by piece. And my philosophy changed. My philosophy was to say, okay, look, we played football for 100 years. We're going to play for another 100. So how do we fix these things solid? How do we fix these things on a solid foundation and not a house of cards and make it work? So when I think about coming back to UMass, it's how do I do my part so that there is a solid build here that could be sustained for the next 100 years. And those are the things that get me fired up and get me excited. Why leave Rhode Island as an AD? I had a really good friend that I reached out to pick his brain about this. He'd kind of gone through a similar type of situation. And, Rini, he gave me some great advice. He said, Thorr, I would encourage you to look at this like, you know what? You won the game. Game's over. Now look at another opportunity. And that, in my mind, made all the sense in the world. And I know Rhode Island's in a good place. I love it. I love the president, love the student athletes, love all the people I've connected with. But I feel like we've left it in a really good place. And now it's time to go take on a new challenge with people that I really like and really respect.
Isn't it great to have those kind of friendships? I know, whenever I made a lot of big decisions in my life, I've reached out to friends like that, and you don't even know what you're going to hear. and then they say something and it clicks for you and it's like, oh yeah. And then you can kind of pass that on to, I mean, that's just a great value of friendship.
It really is, Christian. And you know, when you find people that I always like to have people that are going to tell me, A, what I don't want to hear but need to hear. Yeah. And then also to give me a different perspective. And you know, there's so many people. That's one of the blessings of being in this business for as long as I have. There's great contacts and connections throughout this country of people that have had similar experiences. And so to pick their brain and know that they're giving me their advice based on their care about me and my family. So, you know, it's unbiased and it's concerned. So you're darn right. It makes it really nice.
I think hopefully you've noticed. I mean, Coach Harasymiak talked about in the press conference, you're hiring, giving him kind of a jolt, you know, some light to see. The fans, I think obviously, hopefully, you know how much respect the UMass fans have for you, and you just deciding to make this decision to come back has given them hope. And you kind of talked about the vision there, but can you go into it more? You talked about, you know, learning from your mistakes. What are some of the things when you're building that foundation of a college football program? What are some of the things that go into that maybe your average fan might not understand?
Yeah, I think really looking at your shortcomings, right? And then identifying those. So at Rhode Island, for example, you know, when I first got here, and I alluded to this in the press conference, but I've thought about this for, I can't say for 18 years, but it's probably for 8, and sat back and said, okay, new AD, young guy, a lot of pressure. You got to do this, you got to do that. And probably, you know, listen to some of that where I wasn't in position to be able to say, no, not yet. You know what I mean? We had a really good coach in Tim Sowers. I'd say great, but I didn't work with him long enough. That's my fault, not his. And, you know, but he was a wonderful guy and the staff was made up of great people. But we had part-time coaches, a ton of part-time coaches, a facility that was struggling. We hadn't chartered to an away game. And even after Darren Rizzi was here, we didn't charter for an away game. Those are things that you need to identify. And it seems so simple because it's just what we do today. But it's what we had to get the university to get to that point to understand if we're going to be competitive. And let's not continue to apologize for lack of success. Let's own our lack of success. And I say this because we've made great progress. And I'd like to hope that I'll be able to say this at UMass too. But certainly at Rhode Island, in some cases, we worked hard to not be good. And that's not trying to be funny. That's just looking at it and being critical of ourselves. And so when I give Ryan so much credit for, and the board and the chancellor, is to say, hey, we need to get in this league. If we're going to be good in football, we need to get in the league first and foremost. And to be honest with you, you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation if football wasn't in the MAC, because it's not sustainable. It doesn't work. And I know that. So it's like, I want to go to something where we can build realistically, but till you got in that league, it didn't make sense. Now it does.
I know it's probably going to be a work in progress in the beginning, but December 1st, when you hit the ground and you start there in your new role, what will your day-to-day role be?
Yeah, you know, in a lot of ways, I think, Greeny, it's going to be similar to how it is now. There's great people already there, and I'm not a micromanager. I'm not going to sit there and tell Joe who to recruit, who not to recruit, who to retain, who not to retain. What I will say is sit down with him and say, talk me through about your strategy. How can I help? Yeah. You know, what are the frustrations? What are the areas around campus that maybe I can help with and take off your plate on a regular basis? You know, it's hard being an AD and being with every coach in every program. You know, I can tell you that firsthand. And I'd go see Coach Fleming here. I'd like to say every 2 days, no, that's a lie. And we're in the same building. You just can't. And so, you know, to be able to be there and be there for him, find out what he needs, find out what the staff needs. You know, where are the struggles and where are the shortcomings? Really, the other thing that I'm excited about is reaching out to folks like you, reaching out to Donnie, you know, and say, Coach, what was it like? What are some things that you think I need to work at? Whip, the same thing. People that I've been friends with for a long time that I feel very confident are going to say, hey, here's why we struggled. Here's what we need to focus on. I was thinking about this last night, knowing I was going to get on with you guys. I remember interviewing here at Rhode Island 18 plus years ago. And I must have been asked 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 times, what's your plan? I don't have a plan, and nor should you hire me if I do. I don't know all the problems yet. I know there are some. I know there are some frustrations. I know there needs to be work around, you know, the stadium. I know there needs to be work, but till I can find out and identify by the people that are overcoming them every day, let me go to work and get after that. Also, let me provide you a different perspective. Let me provide you some thoughts on how we can try to do certain things. Why do you want to bring this kid back? Why don't you want to bring this kid back? Here's a different way of looking at it, and here's a different impact. That's the value I think I can bring to the table. The other thing that I'm excited about is I have no agenda, so therefore it's just about trying to help the program get better.
All right, a couple follows up, Christian, before you jump in there. And I can tell you from someone that talks to a lot of people, or I should say a lot of people message me. The program's fractured from what you're talking about with alumni and everything and fans. And I get it. And I've had this conversation with Ryan since the transition from FCS to FBS. It's just, we haven't met expectations, and everyone knows that. And so I get the anger from the fans, and me and Christian talk about it all the time. And I say, the passion, a lot of it, some of it's misguided, some of it's good, but that's why they're fans. It's fanaticals, right? But I always tell Christian, then when you open up X or, you stop seeing that passion, then that's a problem. So it's still there. And that's why I'm so thrilled that they hired a person like you that, and I know you're CAO, you're going to do some other stuff, but really concentrate solely on football to fix those fractures. I mean, you're going to be like a doctor. You're going to fix some fractures. And hopefully guys like me and other people that are a part of the program that maybe have distanced themselves can come back in and just help. When I say help, it could be anything. It could be, hey, I'm going to go to season ticket. I'm going to get season tickets. I'm going to support. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to, make calls. I mean, there's a million ways we can all help. It's easy. And I get it because, it just hasn't gone the way we thought, it's all the coaches we've had. So I'm super happy you're back. Another follow-up off that. I know you said this in the press conference because someone asked, like, are you going to help at all on the field? And you were quick to say, no, off the field. And you just said that you're going to get with Joe. My question is, though, and as you mentioned it, and we've talked about this. We've communicated on this. Stadium needs to get fixed. A lot of stuff gets to get fixed. In today's world, okay, you are not going to win without players. It's Jimmys and Joes over X's and O's. It just is. Every coach out there is good. They all can game plan. But if you don't have the players, you're not going to win. So I think we're set to get the players. I say that Joe said he's going to go back to more of the old school recruiting, which we've talked about here, which I like. Of course, you have to develop those players. And then more importantly, after you develop them, roster retention is so important. I don't think people understand that. You got to keep them. But then talent acquisition in the portal as well. Will there be, and I know UMass has a general manager. I don't know him, so I'm not speaking bad of him. I don't know him. And I do know, though, a lot of schools just throw the general manager label on a person that it runs the gamut in every single program. Will there be a person under you to work with Joe as well, kind of like a triangle for the things we just mentioned, not necessarily recruiting, but roster retention, because obviously there's money in play, talent acquisition, the portal, like things that it's hard for Joe and his staff to do every day while they're coaching a team.
One of the things, it makes total sense. One of the things that was impressive when I went back to that press conference, yes, to answer your question, and there's at least two people already in that capacity now. One I've known, and that handles some of that retention and NIL piece. And then the other that I just got to say hello to very briefly that I would say is more in that general manager role. And if my terminology about labels and jobs, that's how I envisioned it. And Joe and I talked about that. And his level of trust and confidence in the directness that he felt that this person brings to the table is invaluable. And the fact that he's got experience in the NFL level, I think that's great. You need that. And so figuring that piece out, everything you said, critically important. And what makes me feel better about the UMass situation now is NIL is a huge part of recruiting these days, even at the FCS level and retention, critically important. And the fact that, again, the university, Ryan, have stepped up to say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to put towards this. Without that, you can't be successful, especially I'm going to call it a new build, not a rebuild. It's a new build with FCS football. And so in order to get people excited, we need to be able to get those guys here. How do you do that? You get creative with NIL pieces, and you also make sure they have a cool experience. Guys aren't always coming we just built a brand new practice facility. Not brand, it's a renovated practice facility here at Rhode Island. It's great. Well, you know what? Awesome. Makes a huge difference. NIL is far more important. We did that before NIL came in. So now when I look at different things, are people going to come to the stadium? This isn't a cop-out. This is not a cop-out. Are people going to come to UMass to play football or not come because of the stadium? Sorry, I'm not buying it. And if they have a chance to go to a Power 4 league, they're going to the Power 4 league in a lot of ways. But the way the school treats them, and that was another cool experience for me last week. I'm sitting there seeing the way we are utilizing that football facility building, the way we're feeding the players, the way we're taking care of them, the way the academic support is right there and connected with them. Those are the most important pieces of retention. The thing that I'm so excited about is having my office there. Again, I get the chills thinking about it. I love meeting with players. I love getting to know players. And I think one of the things that the hardest part for me leaving here was the connections I've had with players throughout these 18 years, and the feedback I've gotten has been powerful. So how can I help build those relationships with these kids that last a lifetime? That's genuine. And so that's another important piece of retention. So Joe and his staff, they're pros. Just like you said, they've been doing it a long time. You need to continue to find those guys that can make a difference on the field by making that connection or commitment from an NIL perspective to put themselves. Again, I don't know what the numbers are in terms of what other MAC schools are doing, but I do know what we're going to do at UMass. That's got to be a good place to be. Great, let's go find those guys. And then let's go execute. Coach, let's go develop them. Let's go coach them, and let's go get on the field and try to get this thing turned around quicker, but solid footing. I'm not into, and that's another thing. There's everybody, well, what are you going to do? What can we expect in week 1? You know what? I'll find the bathroom in week 1. That's what I'm going to tell you. But because nothing is, I use this term here. My staff's probably glad I'm leaving, because I say there's no such thing as the magic wand of management. It doesn't work. It doesn't exist. It's hard work. It's time, and it's building relationships with everybody and in a most genuine way. And that means having fair conversations, hard conversations, honest conversations with everybody, including my old teammates and season ticket holders and players. So, I mean, if you can't tell, I'm so freaking excited about this because we went through that. I've done it. I've been here. I've done it. Different. I'm not saying FCS and FBS are the same. I'm not implying that. What I'm saying is Bob Markham said this to me once. I asked him, I said, Bob, what's the difference between being AD at Rhode Island and being the AD at South Carolina? He said, you're the mayor of a different city. So as I think about working with a different size city, what I think about with coming here and working specifically with football primarily, it's just a different size city. The duties in a lot of ways are the same. And coming in and identifying the challenges is what I'm the most excited to do. And then also spend a lot of time trying to work to overcome those challenges.
You talked about it during the press conference, and you talked about it again here earlier about Coach Harasymiak being not a good coach, but a great coach. I've followed Coach Harasymiak's career for different reasons that, don't have to do with UMass. And I was, really, really excited when they hired him. Kind of made my feelings on that clear even throughout the season. But this is a results-oriented business, and a lot of fans are, down and they're frustrated, as you said. Again, from someone that they respect so much. Tell them why you believe Coach Harasymiak such a great coach. I
told Joe, and people aren't going to like this, and this is kind of the fun part for me. This is my family. This is my program. This is my school, and I feel very comfortable and confident in saying these things. And people may not like that. I'm good with that. Year 1 doesn't freaking count. When you get hired in December 1st, December 2nd, you haven't put your team together yet. You haven't put your staff together yet. You got to, that's signing date for high schools. You haven't had a chance to put your roster together to figure out what's broken and what isn't. There's excitement. There's enthusiasm. You're working on retention. He lost a lot of guys to the portal. And so then it's a matter of how do you put this together? That's hard enough, never mind in year 1. So my personal philosophy and my experience tells me year 1 doesn't count. How do you get settled? How do you figure out what you need? And so then now you go into, and again, year 1's it's important. You want to win. I get all that. Those are things that I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about is building a program. So when Joe comes in and looks at this year coming up and or this past year and saying, what do we need help with? Where do we need different guys? What do we need different support in player wise? how's my staff figuring this out and so forth? Do I have everything I need? Great. Let's go find those pieces of the puzzle that are going to put us in position to start being competitive. That's what, as a fan base and as an alum and whatnot, people want. We got to find a way to go be competitive. And you can do that with guys. You do that with players, to Reenie's point a little bit ago. So that's why I think, if we're going to sit back, we cannot sit back and evaluate a coach in 1 year. That's not fair. And if I'm a coach, I'm not taking a job if I find out that you're going to be evaluating me in 1 year. I learned it's funny when I've had meetings with coaches here, and they've said at the end of each year, what should my expectation be? And Thorr, we're going to win. We're going to be in the top 4. We're going to be conference championships. We're going to be, and I said, okay, but just remember, I may not be very bright, but I'm going to remember you said that. And so, realistically, you're probably not. How do we get there? How do we make progress? And I don't even want to tell you what I think progress should be next year. I don't know till I get there. I don't know, but it is very much a results-oriented business. That's why we all get into this. That's why the competition is so critically important. But that I'm also a realist, and that may just mean that I'm getting older and saying, okay, realistically, where can we be next year? And that's not an excuse, because I know people hear my words. I'm so careful with my words for a reason. Realistically, what can that expectation be? And then let's try to exceed that. And let's go execute on the investments that we've been given. And let's continue to start growing this thing. And I'm a realist. And that's the thing. I hate delusion. I struggle with delusion. And again, that's just me getting older. What's realistic? How do we build this thing the right way? And how do we put ourselves in position so that, we're all proud 10 years from now because of where we got to? And again, folks, I'm not saying it's going to take 10 years. I'm just saying we got to put ourselves in position to build something that will be sustainable and something that we can have incredible pride in.
And what are some of those qualities about Coach Harasymiak that make you say he's a great coach, you think?
Success of where he's been. Personally, I know him personally, and I really like him. I like being around him, right? But then you look at where coaches have been and at what level and where have they been successful, and the people that they have relationships with and the contacts that they've made. I think that's what I like about him. And I'm incredibly, with his enthusiasm, with his knowledge here, great football knowledge, all the confidence in the world in that. But then also, we talked about a little bit ago, you got to retain players. Can you have a relationship with players? Yes, he absolutely has that ability to have relationships with players. I haven't gotten to know his staff very well, and I'm excited to get to hang out with those guys a lot. But first impressions, same thing. That's what they're about, good football minds, but then also good people. You need that to try to retain these guys, the guys that you want to keep. So, those are the things that impress me. I always look at when I'm going through the coaching process, where have you been and what have you done? And have you been around successful programs? That doesn't mean you have to win championships and that at all. That means you've been part of growth. That means you've been part of, sustained growth where people feel really good about what you're doing. And who have you learned from? That's another important piece. We've all learned from different people. We all have mentors. Who have you learned from? And what are you going to take from them that you want to continue to do? And what are you going to take from them that maybe you don't want to do?
You mentioned the great Bob Markham. That was my athletic director. And I know you learned from him. Great man, just, passed away recently this year, but was a great administrator. I just wanted to say that since you
absolutely right. Spot on.
You mentioned your management style as a leader, that you don't micromanage. Okay. I understand the chain of command better than anyone. I did it for a long time in law enforcement. So yep. Ryan is the athletic director. Okay. Yep. I'm assuming there is a conversation where they're going to be hands off, right? I mean, I get it, veto power, chain of command, but there's not going to be any micromanaging of you and what you do in your role. Was that conversation?
I'm very confident in that. Ryan and I, again, we've been friends for 10 years. And yeah, we had those conversations, again, I wouldn't come here if I didn't trust him and have confidence in him. I wouldn't. I'm coming here to help him and help my school and my wife's school and my program. And I know what he has shared with me, and he shared it again last week, is Thorr, I'm here. I'll do whatever you need. And if there's an ultimate decision or challenge that needs to be made as the AD, he's going to make it, But the day-to-day function is going to be mine. And I've been empowered to do that. And that's exciting to me. Now, let me tell you what that means. We're going to talk every day. Yeah. That's who I am. And that's how I kind of roll with this. I've been that way with every president I've worked with. I want them to know, I want their advice. I don't know everything. He's been part of something for a long time, but he's empowering me to kind of, to be that day-to-day guy around football. And so, that excites me. And so chain of command, you're spot on. You get it. It's just, if all of a sudden there's something that's so significant that we sit down and talk about that, hey, we need help, as the AD, you got to be the one that goes down that pathway. If there's things that what I also want to do is keep things off his desk, that, and the last, I was in this capacity once, and that's a big role for the number two. And I've had people do that for me here. You want to be able to answer questions, keep things off the AD's desk until you can't. I don't want them to be surprised by anything. I don't want the chancellor to be surprised by anything. So, again, I'm confident in that. Incredibly confident.
I've got one more, and then I'll let Rini go, and then we'll let you get out of here. But it's obvious you're embracing this new era of college football and looking at how it can help, right? NIL, if you guys have an advantage. Is this something you've always embraced even before it came about, or is it just something you're just being flexible with?
If I said yes, my nose would grow just like Pinocchio's all the way and hit you both. No, I didn't embrace it at first. And it's a challenge. It's hard. Right. It's when you've got people that make donor investments, university investments in NIL, and at a place like ours currently at Rhode Island, we've been focusing primarily on basketball, a little bit on football. It's hard. And the return on that investment is a challenge, especially if you're not near the top. People think, look at your own snapshot. You're not there. That's hard. So in this case, I think it's critically important and actually can give UMass an advantage when we sit back and say, okay, budgetarily, how do we identify high character guys and highly talented guys and strong leaders? Those guys are sought after. So if you do have the other pieces of the puzzle in terms of how you treat them, the way, the food support, the academic support, the facility in terms of the football facility, et cetera, the greatest university in the country in terms of where we could attract people to come to. So those things are all in place. But now you can also say, here's an NIL investment that we can make in you. And hopefully that's just enough to put them over the top to wanting to be here. But I would also argue, not only recruiting, but then retention. You both have said that retention of the guys you want to keep is really important. It's easy to go in the portal now. So until that changes, if it ever does, you got to be able to look at your guys and have those honest conversations. So I embrace it wholeheartedly. To me, it's a huge positive as it relates to UMass football, a huge positive. Now, if we were going in at the lowest NIL budget, different story. You can't win, just like being an independent. But if you're going in making those quality investments, I'll give Ryan a lot of credit working creatively to come up with those solutions and how to do this. Son of a gun, now let's go. Let's go execute. The tools have been given to us. It's going to take a little bit of time, but the tools are there. Now let's go move this thing forward.
And, I'm just on that though, before I give you the last question and get you out of here. I'm fortunate enough because I travel the country. I talk to a lot of coaches, a lot of ADs. I see a lot of programs. And as it comes to money, the money now it's such a difference from P4 to Group of Five. I mean, the money's ridiculous. So I try to tell people and calm people down is when you invest money, whether it's rev share, NIL, really what you're doing is, and you mentioned this, it's like you have to invest appropriately for your conference, right? So if you're at the higher end of your conference, whether it be the MAC, whether it be the Sun Belt, whether it be the American Conference USA, you're in a good spot. I think a lot of fans start wandering and they see what these bigger schools are doing. You're never, ever, ever going to compete with them. And you're always, and you mentioned this, you're always going to lose players to them. And I think coaches, they took it personal a few years ago when it first started. Now they know that's it. You're going to recruit players, say, listen, if you ball out here the next 1-2 years and we get you for 2 years and you've done really well here, you're going to go places. We're going to actually help you do that. Yep. But to get them in the first place, you just got to have money that's equal with your conference. And I try to talk people off the ledge with that all the time. So,
and I think that's important, Rini, because, when you think about a coach, attracting a coach in any sport, and you say, and let's just talk about UMass football. all right, coach, we're gonna do this. We're gonna now though evaluate you based on how you do against Ohio State and Michigan. That's not fair, and I'm not taking that job. Can you go and try to compete as a one-off? Yeah, absolutely. You go in and battle, but that's not the competition. That's not the measurement. The measurement is we're in a league now. We're in a really good football league now. How do we put ourselves in position to compete for a championship in that league? How do we put ourselves in position to be bowl eligible in that league? That should be our focus. And that should be, as simple as it is, that's where we should be. Yeah. And every decision that we make has to be along those lines. That's important. Every decision we make should be with that mindset of how do we get there in 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever the number is. How do we get there? And then once we're there, how do we sustain it? Because once you get there, that expectation, as it should continue to grow. No different than when you were a player. Yeah.
All right, last question. We'll get you out of here. It's a contract question. I have it on good authority that part of your contract is Antonio's every week. Is that true or not?
Are you kidding me? So it's funny. I'm gonna tell you this real quick. Since February, I've kind of gone on this keto Atkins diet, and I've lost about 40 pounds. So I get this job, and my wife's like, "You're gonna go to the hangar, and you're gonna go to Antonio's. You're gonna bloom back up. I'm gonna say it because no, I won't say it. I'm gonna bloom back up to a defensive lineman back in the day. So, but no, I'll tell you what. We are so excited. Both Cindy and I are so excited to get back. We have so many friends there. Smiling at. We've drove around twice now, kind of quietly going up there and just driven around and haven't seen anybody. We just wanted to smile and look at different places, and certainly the hangar was one, and Antonio's absolutely was the other. And so if all of a sudden you see me a year from now and I weigh 300 pounds, I apologize.
Well, listen, George is a great strength coach there, so you got no excuses because your office is in the building. That's and right. The gym's right underneath you.
I work out in our weight room 3 days a week with my president. So when I met George last week, I'm like, "Hey, am I allowed to? Can I use the facility?" He's like, "Are you kidding me? Get in here!" So I have no excuses. No excuses.
Oh, Thorr, from the bottom of my heart, man, welcome home.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you, Rainey. Christian, great to see you, and thanks for this opportunity. I can't wait to get started.
Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it, Thorr.
Good stuff.
I want to say one thing. So I asked him that last question about embracing the new, era of college football. And there's a lot of people that have been in the college college athletics in general that are getting out of it now. And I don't begrudge them because this is not what they signed up for, right? There's going to be new coaches that come along and get in. I don't want to hear any complaints because they know what they're signing up for. But it's the people in the middle, right? And I think it's illustrative that he's able to be nimble in change. I think that says a lot about him, that he's like, I wasn't on board for this now, but it is what it is, and we're going to embrace it and use it to our advantage. Obviously, that's a positive, but I think it says a lot about him more in his character.
And I think the fans need to realize, because there's we know because we deal with the fans, and Thor had mentioned, careful with his words. It doesn't matter what you say because you're always going to get half the people that just say, I don't agree with you. Half will agree. And I'm in the business, so I know. What people need to understand is you're getting an administrator, okay, that's a former player at the school. He talked about it, met his wife there, an alumni, former player that's an administrator. You're getting an administrator that has more experience, okay? I'm an athletic director in that world than anybody in the UMass athletic department right now that's solely going to be over football. Think about that. This is such a huge get. And we talked about it. I was, after the game last week, I put, people were sending me messages on Twitter, and I was just like, I'm broken, right? Even me, I get broken sometimes. It's just been really tough. This unbroke me. And we talked about it in the pod last week. A move had to happen. And this is it. And I think this is a catalyst and a springboard forward. And I know Joe and the team, there's a few games left. They're going to keep fighting. Northern Illinois tonight. Listen, they've had a rough season. They're 2-7. I want to get their record right. I don't want anyone yelling at me. 2-7, 1-4 in the conference. Remember, they're leaving. They're going to the Mountain West. Thomas Hammock's a really good coach. But they're going to the Mountain West, so they come into Amherst. Hopefully there's a good crowd tonight. I'm excited to see what they can do. Listen, they're going to keep fighting. We talked about it, and I would just love for them to get 1 or 2 wins, just to get some momentum for the kids, 1 or 2 wins, springboard, get into, into the season's not over, but springboard them into the next, and just keep fighting like hell. And I know they're going to do that. And I think they can get this one tonight.
Yeah, I think that this program could use a moment. It seemed like, Buffalo was close to being that moment. And there's, you could see people were already down going into Buffalo, right? They were just down now then as they are now. And they were ready for it. They were just ready for that moment. They were embracing it. And unfortunately got ripped away and made it even worse. But one of these home action games, if you could get one of those and create a moment, hopefully this one, because I'm not sure how many students will be at the next one because it's right before Thanksgiving, but man, it really would be special if they can get this one tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. And before we sign off, I just want to say, I know there was some fires at UMass this week, and some thoughts and prayers go out to everyone there. I know a lot of students were displaced. Thank the Lord, no one was injured, no one was hurt, but obviously a lot of damage there, a lot of people displaced, so I'm praying for them. And then we just had Veterans Day, and I always say just thank you to the men and women, the great men and women of our country, our veterans that served us for our freedom so we can do things like this. So just want to give my salute there as well.
Absolutely. Shout out to my dad, former Navy guy, for being a veteran. And also, like you said, the fire. I mean, man, there's a couple kids that I've gotten to know being up there, Dylan and Cam. They both work, for the Collegian and WMUR and sports journalists up there. They sent out a video of the smoldering, their apartment gone, everything gone. Yeah. And they're at the basketball game working the next day. Yeah. And during that video, all they're doing is saying thank you to everybody else. I mean, it really, really is a microcosm and a terrible instance of the character of the UMass student. Like, I've been blown away for the last 9 months being up there around these people. I tell my kids and my family, like, I went to UMass and I wanted to be a sports journalist. If I was there now and I was seeing guys like Cam and Dylan and Zeke, I'd have been like, yeah, this ain't for me, because I'm not ready to do everything these kids are doing. Like, really shout out to those guys and prayers to everyone who's affected by the fire.
Yeah, no doubt. So, all right, let's hopefully we get a win tonight, buddy. So,
yeah, all right. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll be here next week. Thank you.